Heat drives our steam turbines. Heat drives our tractors. Heat drives our powerful locomotives and the many automobiles on our highways. Heat cooks our food and warms our homes. Heat is the basis of our very existence. When air is forced up through the hot coals of the forge, the oxygen of the air unites with the carbon of the coal. In this chemical reaction, heat is given off. It makes no difference whether the carbon is present in the form of coal, wood, oil, or gasoline.
The Industrial Revolution is a time between the 1760s and the 1840s where humans understood how to harness the power of coal, invented the steam locomotive, and understood how to mass produce iron. After this period, human development saw unfathomable growth. Several innovations that came after can be credited to the Industrial Revolution, but the use of fossil fuels like coal emits gases like carbon dioxide and methane and water vapor into the atmosphere. This accumulation of these gases in the atmosphere creates an effect called a greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is basically these gases trapping the heat that should actually escape the Earth's atmosphere. This trapping of heat increases the Earth's temperature. This increase of temperature is called global warming. Because the Earth's temperature is rising more than it should, the polar ice caps and the glaciers start melting. These melting ice caps and glaciers affect the sea level and the temperature of the oceans. Different ocean temperatures would create massively catastrophic changes in our climate. This phenomenon is what we all know as climate change. Climate change right now is an existential threat for everyone in our generation. Here is Greta Thunberg talking about how learning about climate change gave her depression and anxiety.
It was too unreal. So when I was 11, I became ill. I fell into depression. I stopped talking and I stopped eating. In 2 months, I lost about 10 kilos of weight.
So, how does one think about climate change? What perspective we should look at? Who is going to help us? Let's think it over a cup of coffee. Did you know that by 2050, half the land that is used to grow coffee is probably going to be useless because of climate change? I should probably start drinking something else than caffeine because it's going to be too expensive for me to drink. That is why this episode of Caffeine Thoughts is sponsored by Red Bull. Woo! December 2015, a group of really powerful people from all over the world came together in a conference called the UNFCCC. Here, they all together decided that climate change was an existential threat for the human race and that actions need to be taken soon. Upon this convention, something we all know, the Paris Climate Agreement was taken. The goal of the Paris Climate Agreement was to make sure every powerful country in the world comes together to limit its emissions to set goals that they give, and also the whole world to make sure that we don't increase our temperature by 2 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial levels. Why 2 degrees Celsius? Who decided 2 degrees Celsius? Who decided that 2 degrees Celsius is safe and after that it is not safe? Who is it safe for? We need to do some linguistic resistance on climate change and how we see. Usually when we talk about climate change, it is almost always a bunch of white people coming forward and talking about it like an existential threat that is somewhere in the future. But is it really? A lot of climate scientists say that the 2 degrees Celsius point is actually scientifically meaningless. 2 degrees Celsius still has massive effects on the planet. So why 2 degrees Celsius? Because the powerful people in Berlin, in Paris, in Washington, 2 degrees Celsius is something that will not affect them. You see, global warming is a very misdirecting word. Yes, the whole world is warming, but the effects are very local. The poorest of the world will always be the most affected by climate change, and the 2 degrees Celsius mark does not consider them at all. At 2 degrees Celsius is when massive climate catastrophes start affecting the global north, that is Europe and America. The lion's share of the emissions and the responsibility for global warming is to the global north. So basically, we have all come to an agreement that benefits the global north but hurts the global south as much as possible, whereas the global north is the most responsible for all these issues and the global south is least responsible for all these issues. So why is it that so many climate activists who we see in America and Europe and all agree with this 2 degrees Celsius goal? Philosopher Jose Medina calls this epistemic vice. You see, philosopher Jose Medina looks into how privilege affects how we know things, epistemology. He says that privileged people have epistemic privilege, as in they have more places to know things, but they have epistemic vice, as in they are arrogant, they are ignorant, and they really do not care about knowing things about others. Whereas underprivileged people are epistemically oppressed, as in they do not have places to get information, but they have epistemic virtue, as in underprivileged people as a state of being are constantly needed to think about others when they do things. So they constantly think about others and have a much open mind to take in knowledge. We should stop having epistemic vice when thinking about climate change. Climate change is not abstract, far away, a problem for the future. Climate change is a problem right now. Just because we are privileged, we sit in air-conditioned rooms, we have not faced water shortages in our life, doesn't mean these problems do not happen all over the world. We should stop looking at climate change as a problem that the global north looks at it, but as a problem the global south looks at it. What is even more shocking is that a global warming of a few degrees is actually beneficial for the global north. Like, it shortens winters, it improves their agriculture, and actually gives them better climates than they have right now, which actually helps them much more. But this positive effects is correlated by intense negative effects that happen in the global south. Because of this, we see the global north and the elites of the world trying to push market solutions for climate change. They try to tell you to buy this to solve climate change, to do this to solve climate change. An ideology that surrounds around the individual to solve a global issue does not make sense, but it only makes sense when people are there to profit out of it, and here it is the global north who will. This ideology of making everything about individual and markets is called neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is the ideology where capitalism and markets are the most efficient way of giving humans the best thing that they need. So governments should stay away and do as little as possible to interfere into these markets. But as time goes on, we realize that market economics is what has made this problem much worse. We need to start looking at climate change from the perspective of the global south. And from the perspective of the global south, climate change is not a far off abstract problem, but is a problem of today and of now. And that is the perspective that everyone in power should also look at. Only then can we have meaningful solutions for this problem.